G'day mate, and welcome to Ixion with me, Jitty. Today, I want to show you my guide for building out Sector 4, because I've already done a guide for Sectors 1 and also Sector 2, and then finally Sector 3, where originally Sector 1, Chapter 0, we were just trying to survive, and then we unlocked Sector 2, which we turned into really, an industrial sector. We started processing materials, we started really being able to manufacture our way out of trouble, and then we opened up Sector 3, where we turned that into a breadbasket. We turned that into the new breadbasket, basically, so we could empty out Sector 1 and turn that into, well, a little bit of a recycling center with a bit of defrosting thrown in as well. It sort of had a multi-purpose still, but now I think it's time we talk about Sector 4. As always, links to my Sectors 1, 2, and 3 guys are going to be down in the first pinned comment below. And before we start talking about Sector 4, I'd like to ask, can I borrow a like? I'd just like to borrow a like for the moment. If you're not happy with the video, you don't agree with me in the video, you think you could have done better, by all means, at the end of the video, I'll remind you, you can have your like back. But can I just borrow it just for the moment? All right. Now let's talk about Sector 4, where we're going to really start getting into recycling, because you've probably progressed a certain amount, you've probably got a decent amount of technology up and running, you have access to a decent amount of waste. And now, when it comes to waste, this is where you're going to really start excelling in the game. This is where you're going to start taking giant leaps, because you're going to have a lot more resources to be able to play with and use and do things with. So we need to talk about Sector 4 and how it's going to be our waste management processing center. Now, I am going to talk about doing this with endgame tech. There are going to be things that you probably don't have access to, and that's fine. You can substitute in some other building for the moment, or you can just leave the area empty and fill it out later. On top of that, we are going to be planning in to put a lot of waste management for a lot of people. You may not have enough people, you may not have enough waste at this stage, but we're going to plan out to have the ability to process an awful lot of waste. Okay. We are going to need to put in some very basics to get people up and running. At the moment, I'm just throwing everything in on a straight line because, well, we need to have these basic buildings. We also need to have a whole lot of basic people. So first thing we're going to do is wish that was over a tile. Guess what? Move over by a tile. You can go over there instead. All right, we are going to have 2 tiles from the edge. I'm going to build a road right the way along and all the way down to this opening. In this area, I'm going to be putting in population. I'm going to be putting in cell housing. Now, cell housing, by default, holds 125 people. So we're going to be putting in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So by default, them only holding 125 people, that means I can hold 875 people in this sector as is. As you progress through the game, you're going to get certain researchers, and assuming you complete them, they can hold up to 200 people per housing block, which means that is 1,400 people right there, which, by the way, a fully upgraded mess hall can only feed 1,400 people. So I have planned for more housing in this sector. You won't need it if you complete all the research for the cell housing. You'll free up those slots. Those slots you can turn into batteries or something else useful. If not, by all means, throw in a second mess hall. You could probably rip out a house and put in a mess hall instead. All right. That's going to be the first thing we're going to need. A whole lot of housing to fit a whole lot of people. On top of that, you are going to need a couple of researchers to really maximize the amount of trash you're getting out of the sector. And I have intentionally chose the cell housing for the knee-high cell protocol, which I can't remember the exact stats on it. And it turns out if I find out right now when I'm talking about doing this video, when I hover over it, it doesn't tell me exactly what the stats are for cell housing. I do know for crew quarters, it has the same research, which gives you one waste per 20 inhabitants over 15 cycles. I believe when it comes to cell housing, it's 1 waste per 20 people over 5 cycles. So 4 times the amount of waste. It really adds up with cell housing. Also, they fit in really nicely. Okay, so that's going to be the first thing we're going to need. Second thing we're going to need is, obviously, we're going to be putting in some factories. We're going to be putting in some waste treatment centers. Now, we're going to have the workshop in the way already. It's fine. Go away. All right. We are going to put in, where are we? Factories. We're putting in waste treatment centers, and I'm going to have a number of these. First off, I'm going to put in 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to need the first 4. The first 4 is going to give you a specialization in both industry rank 1 and recycling rank 1. Recycling rank 1 is the really big one we want to get our hands on very, very early, because it's going to give us a number of advantages. Okay, before we actually put in the DLSL center, so I can talk about exactly what that upgrade is going to give us, we're going to put in a couple of batteries. Now, I've intentionally chosen to put in a couple of medium batteries back here and plug them into the road. Now, if you don't have medium batteries unlocked, by all means put in some small batteries back here first and upgrade them later, but we're going to choose to put in a couple of medium batteries because they fit out the tiles a little bit better. On top of that, we're going to put 2 small storages at the front, and I'm going to talk about why I'm using smalls over mediums in just a second. These 2 we're both going to want to set to waste because we're going to have a lot of waste to move around. Lastly, we need to put in stability. We want to put in the DLS center, which is going to go right beside this. And finally, I'm going to add a road to the front of that. Sure, we're going to have a little roundabout. So, DLS center. If we bring up this, we can see we have recycling tier 1, which recycling buildings produce 30% more resources, and stability penalty from waste buildup is reduced by 50%. I've never had this debuff, so I don't know what they're talking about. And I've had a significant amount of waste stored in a sector before, a few hundred pieces of waste. Also, we're going to have that industrial tier 1, which means our battery is going to last 20% longer in this particular sector, which is going to be handy because these are fairly power hungry. I've done a number of researches on them already, but they still start off at 15 power a piece, which can really add up over a sector because we're only halfway through building these waste treatment centers. Now, with the 30% buff, actually, let's remove one of you. Cool. We normally use 50 waste to provide... There we go. 50 waste to provide make 50 alloy, or 50 waste to produce 20 polymer, or 50 waste to make 1 microchip. Okay. When we get that buff, if we put factories, waste treatment center, if we drop that back in, I'm going to use 50 to make 65. Okay, because it's 30% extra. We're going to use 50 to make 26 because it's 30% extra, or we're going to use 50 to make 2. The reason we're going to make 2 is the game takes the 1 that we were making every 10 cycles and multiplies it by 1.3 to give you that 30% buff, which equals 1.3. The problem is, after it equals 1.3, the game can't calculate 1.3 and can't give you 1.3 microchips every 10 cycles. So what it does is it rounds up. So it basically doubles the amount of microchips you're going to get out of waste management, which is where the real power comes in. We can have a couple of these doing alloy, and, well, one of these doing alloy is 6.5 steel per cycle. I'm in this super late game and I'm spending 13 steel per cycle on repairing my ship. So if I have 2 of these doing steel, I'm done. My ship gets repaired for free. And if I have 1 or 2 of these doing microchips, that provides all the microchips I'm going to need for construction and all colonist training for quite some time, probably the whole game. We can throw in polymer very, very easily, and we can have a self-sufficient ship from just waste. So this is where the real power of the waste management sector comes in. All right, last things we want to put in here on this particular wall is I'm going to put in a hull temple right here. Reason I put in the hull temple is it's a fairly small building, and it can give you a lot of stability. In my case, I'm getting a +2 from the temple. Also getting from the DLS center, I'm getting +3 from propaganda. Also, don't forget you're gonna have to turn on waste recycling for this particular sector, especially. I'm also choosing to turn on intense work hours, so I need 25% less people to actually do things. I don't know what you're doing there that you shouldn't be there. Okay, next thing we want to talk about is the right hand side and down the bottom. Okay, along the right hand side we're going to put in maintenance. I'm going to put in 2 tier 2 buildings, batteries. Okay, again, I just want to fill out this space, and they fit in very, very nicely. We're also going to bring in a road right to the end of the battery, because that'll give us access to put in a house here. Plus, we're going to put in a house here, and we're going to put in another house here. Now, if I've already maxed out all the self-housing, I don't need these Dominic quarters, so I could put in batteries instead. As we can see for this particular sector already, I'm in sector number 4. I've already got 16.8 cycles worth of battery power. Then again, only half the sector's built. And also, then again, I have a number of upgrades. Cool. Yep, go away. All right, next thing we want to do is we want to put in more batteries. We're going to be putting in more things that use power in just a second, so let's put in some more batteries. Also, again, they fit very nicely. So I'm going to put in 2 more medium batteries right there. And then I have, well, all this space in the middle where I still need to put in this infrastructure. Plus, I'm going to put in a couple of other things. I think the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to move food, mess hall. Let's just move you out of the way. And I'll also move your storage out of the way for food, just so we can talk about what I want to do across this wall. So across this wall, I want to put in more waste management, a lot more waste management. We're going to go into factories, waste management center, and I'm going to aim these down. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, look, that fits very, very nicely. And if we just check this very quickly... Oh, it turns out I don't have the research to see how close we are to the next level. Can we just grab that very quickly? Thanks. All right, so we're going to put in another 5 of these, which is going to cost us an awful lot of workers. Also, an awful lot of power at these, using 15 power each. Yes, okay. It's fine. It's fine. We've still got plenty of room left over. All right. As for down the front, I want to put in a couple of things that we would really, really like. We're going to go back to stability, and I'd really like to put in an alternative life center right where the workshop happens to be for the 8th time. So let's remove you, and we're just going to click all the wrong buttons. Put the workshop right the way up there. Also going to remove our steel storage because we'll put it back in a second. All right. Stability. I want to put an alternative life center all the way down here. Which then right behind that gives me a couple more tiles to put in another lot of housing, because I'm going to assume that right from the start of the game you don't have all the upgrades for the cell housing, so you're going to need some couple of spare houses at least to start you off. Beside that, we can finally put in our workshop. This is where it's going to live forever, which means I no longer have to destroy the poor little guy. Beside that, rather, we're going to put in, of course, we're going to put in our food storage facing this way. Also, we're going to put in our food. We're actually going to put our mess hall right beside that with a little road to join the two together, and we'll set you for food. Okay, let's spin all the way around this time. So with this little setup done, we need to put in a whole bunch of storages for a whole bunch of things. 1, because we're going to need a variety of things we want to store in here. 2, because small storages are actually more powerful than medium storages. I know, but look, they both have their pros and cons. I'll probably put it better that way. So I'm going to intentionally put in 4 small storages like this, okay? And we'll talk about these ones first. So we're going to have 1 storage for food, guaranteed every sector. Every sector also needs a storage for alloy, and you need 1 storage for microchips, so you can bring in microchips so you can build things, which then gives me 4 small storages, which I can do all sorts of things with. Now, a small storage holds normally 100 units worth of material, whereas a medium storage holds 300 units, so it holds 3 times the amount for twice the space. The catch is it comes down to the transporters. Every worker in a stockpile represents a transporter. So for a small, normally I would have 5, because I actually have one of the policies in place. I'm using 25% less workers, so I only have 4 workers, but still 5 transporters. Don't ask how this works. It just happens to work like that. One of them is obviously driven by a robot, or we have some person who's somehow riding 2 of them at the same time. Don't question it. The medium storage has 8 normally, and with the policy I have running, it's 6. But we're going to go with 8. So a small storage is going to have 5, and if I put 2 of them side by side, I'm going to have 10 transporters total. This is inter-sector, so this is just inside this sector. Intra-sector. Intra-sector, I'm going to have 10 transporters. The medium would have 8 transporters, which is less transporters overall to move things around this sector. As far as I can tell, I really haven't been able to confirm it, because trying to catch the transporters moving from sector to sector is not exactly easy. But as far as I can tell, it seems that a small stockpile has 1 inter-sector transporter, a medium has 2 inter-sector transporters, and a large has 4 inter-sector transporters. So I'm not winning out on transporters, going sector to sector. What I am doing is I'm maximizing my ability to move things around inside the sector. As trash, you tend to need 50 at a time, and when they process a full lot of trash, you suddenly need to get another 50 in there. Having lots and lots of little transporters from lots and lots of different storages means that they get restocked quicker. If I went for mediums, I would have less transporters overall. More importantly, if I swapped out these 4, which I could do quite easily, for a large, I would go from holding 300 to 700, I think it is, for a large without any upgrades. Maybe it's 600. I'm not sure. But I only end up with 12 transporters total for that large storage compared to 5, 10, 15, 20. That's a very, very big difference when it comes to the amount of people that can move things around. Sure, I'm not going to disagree. It does cost more power to run 4 smalls compared to 1 large. It also costs more people to run 4 smalls compared to a large. That's perfectly agreeing with you. But the plot gets thicker because under the technology tree, we have the stockpile upgrades where we get vertical parking, where each stockpile can send 1 more transporter. Also, the collapsible frames where stockpiles can send 2 more transporters. That's not 1 plus 2. That's 1 or 2 extra. It's an either or situation. This is the thing with Ixion. Everything is an either or situation when it comes to upgrades. So if your mining ships have a plus 10, plus 20, plus 30, it's not 10, 30, 60. It's 10, 20, or 30. It's an either or situation. Okay, so I can get 1 extra transporter for each small, or 2 extra transporters for each small, which means I go from 5 to 7, so that's 7, 14, 28, or all up, compared to a large stockpile, which has 12, plus 2 extra, being 16. There's a fairly big difference when you start adding in those sorts of numbers. So I tend to go for lots of small ones. We're going to be setting, obviously, each one of these to trash, because that's the main thing I want to move around this sector. I will, if I want to do polymer, need to have one of these set to polymer, and that is also the advantage of using lots of small ones. It means I can dabble on exactly what I want to have stored where. So I'm, in my case, definitely going to go with all smalls. Also means that when I come out to the sector grid, I can say, hey, I want to have 300 or 720 trash in this sector, which I'm pretty sure I can't burn through that much trash that quickly. That's the other thing. They're going to bring in the trash fairly quickly, and then they're going to process it, which is really what I want. Also, it means I have a lot of transporters to pull a lot of trash out of a lot of houses in this particular sector. So it still gives me this big giant gap. Now, this big giant gap has many, many options. The 2 options I want to talk about is the drone bay. Now, the drone bay is a much more efficient transporter to move things from one sector to another sector. These start off with the ability to move 10 items at once, and fully upgraded, they can move 24 units of resources at a time between sectors, which is a lot more than these guys, which move 5 items at a time between sectors per storage. So even if I had a large one in there, well, one of their trucks would move. I'd have 4 trucks. They could move 20 items at a time. They also have to follow the roads, where, as we can see, the drones fly through the little hole in the hull walls, I guess, and just fly over to storages and drop off things and pick up things miles faster. Miles and miles faster. Yep. The other gap I have right beside it, I have conveniently left open to put in a health center. Because, well, once I put in a health center, I don't need an infirmary. I don't need an infirmary in every single sector, as long as this particular sector has a train station. Of course, this sector has a train station. Every sector has a train station. And this means that I don't have to worry about having to have 3 workers, 5 workers, 8 workers. I don't remember how many workers is in an infirmary. 4. So 5 workers. 5 workers in every single sector, trying to treat 25 injured crew members at a time. I can have a single hospital, costs a lot more workers, 40, also a lot more power, 40, but at the same time, actually, I think it needs 50 people. Yeah, 50 people overall as workers, but it can treat 100 people from all sectors combined. That's a much more accurate way of saying it. So this becomes my final build. My final build for my waste management sector. And with this setup, I have two very important things. I have at least 10 sectors, well, 10 cycles worth of power in the way of batteries in this sector. That is whilst having all the extra housing in. If I don't need the housing, I pull these out and put in batteries instead. I can definitely take that number up. And as far as colony wise, I can fit 1,848 people in this sector as is when it's fully upgraded. I am talking about having super late game tech, but this is what I happen to have in this sector. On top of that, I'm going to have a guaranteed well, the alternative life center is guaranteed to give me a +1 to happiness. If you do the research for dollar survivors families, which will give you a extra +1 if you have at least 400 crew in the sector. I do. Plus an extra +1 if you have more than 800 crew in the sector. I would with this one. It's sort of designed to dump all the people in that you don't really want. I would have a +3 total from this guy. Also, I would have the 3 from propaganda, minus the 1 from waste, minus the 1 from increased working hours. The less people required for actual working. Yep, so that brings me down to just a +1 overall for the DLS center. Also a +1 from the train station, and then don't forget we have the +1 for the integrity. And also, if you build the hull temple, if you get the hull temple, the praise and upgrade, and also no, just the praise and upgrade. The praise and upgrade will give you a +3. It turns out. +2. So overall, I've got a 3, 4, 5, 6 minus 2 is 4, +2 is 6, +1 for the train station 7, +1 for the hull integrity 8, an overall of +8. Yeah, with a couple of points from dead earth sickness and other events that we continue throughout the game. So yes, this is what happens in my waste sector. Also means that this can produce an incredible amount of steel very, very quickly, or an incredible amount of microchips or polymer very, very quickly. Or you can carefully balance it to make sure the ship is completely redundant, completely self-sufficient, and not have to worry about, well, what the ship is doing and what we're trying to do to keep the ship afloat, because, well, you have the waste from the people providing all the resources you require to keep the ship up and running. But yes, this brings us to the end of this particular video and this particular sector. I gotta say, everything fits in very, very well, and I will actually attach, or maybe I'll slide it in as a still image. I will actually attach a top-down view of the actual sector, done in a lovely web page, the Ixion Planner version 0.4, which I'll also link down in the description below, because it's a very, very good web source for you to be able to design your sectors in a web page before you actually have to spend the time and the effort trying to build them in-game. But with all that said, I think this is where we're going to end this particular video. I did ask earlier in the video, could I borrow a like? I'd really, really appreciate it if I could keep that like, because I think with this sector under your belt, you've probably got everything you need to run through the game and not worry about resources anymore. Because I got to say, worrying about resources is not fun. It's much more enjoyable game if you can sit back and know, hey, as long as the people keep pooping, keep making waste, we can keep flying around forever. As long as I can keep up with the food production, which requires ice. I wonder if there's a technology we could use to use waste to make water. Oh, there is. We might talk about that in a future video. But with all that said, I need to call this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Do hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you in the very next video. All right, bye.